Working the night shift at a call center isn't for the faint-hearted. The job requires handling calls from all over the world, dealing with irate customers, and resolving issues in the dead of night when most people are asleep. For Sarah, it was the perfect job. She loved the quiet of the night and the thrill of working when the rest of the world was dormant. But something happened one night that changed her perspective forever. The call center was located in an old office building on the outskirts of the city. The building had a rich history, having once been a bustling hotel in the early 1900s. It had been repurposed into an office space in the 1980s, but much of its old charm and eerie ambience remained. The night shift was always sparsely populated, with only a handful of employees scattered across the vast floor, each illuminated by the glow of their computer screens. One night, Sarah was covering a shift that ran from midnight to 8 a.m. She was settled into her cubicle, surrounded by the familiar hum of computers and the occasional ringing of phones. The calls were slow that night, giving her ample time to catch up on some paperwork. At around 2 a.m., she noticed that the air had become unnaturally cold, sending a shiver down her spine. She pulled her sweater tighter and tried to shake off the feeling of unease that was creeping over her. Her colleague, Mike, sat a few cubicles away. He was a veteran of the night shift and often told stories about the building's haunted past. Sarah had always laughed off his tales as mere attempts to scare the newbies, but tonight, something felt different. As the clock ticked towards 3 a.m., Sarah's phone rang. She put on her headset and answered in her usual cheerful tone, but there was no response.
Hello, this is Sarah. How can I assist you?
She repeated, but all she heard was static. Assuming it was a bad connection, she hung up and went back to her work. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, she answered with a bit more caution.
Hello, this is Sarah. How can I assist you?
Once again, there was no reply, only a faint whispering sound that sent chills down her spine. She listened closely, trying to make out the words, but they were too faint. She hung up, her heart pounding in her chest. Sarah decided to take a break and get some fresh air. She walked down the dimly lit hallway towards the break room, passing by the old conference rooms that were rarely used at night. As she neared the break room, she heard what sounded like footsteps behind her. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty, and the only sound was the faint buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead. She quickened her pace and entered the break room, where she found Mike making a cup of coffee.
Hey Mike, did you hear anything just now?
She asked, trying to sound casual. Mike looked up and grinned. You mean like footsteps in the hallway?
Yeah, I've heard that before. This place is creepy at night.
Sarah laughed nervously.
Yeah, maybe it's just my imagination.
Mike poured her a cup of coffee.
You know, there's a story about this building. Back when it was a hotel, there was a fire in the early 1900s. A lot of people didn't make it out. Some say their spirits still roam the halls.
Sarah shivered.
Great, just what I needed to hear on a night like this.
They chatted for a while, trying to shake off the eerie atmosphere, before heading back to their desks. Sarah sat down and tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to the strange phone calls and the footsteps in the hallway. At around 4 a.m., she received another call. This time, she hesitated before answering.
Hello, this is Sarah. How can I assist you?
The whispering was back, clearer this time. She strained to listen, her heart racing. It sounded like a woman's voice, but she couldn't make out the words. Hello, can you hear me? She asked, her voice trembling. The whispering grew louder, and she could finally make out the words, "Help me. Please help me." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Who is this? Where are you?" she demanded, but the line went dead. Panicking, she ran over to Mike's cubicle. "Mike, I just got a call." Someone was whispering, asking for help. Mike's expression turned serious. "What did they say?" "They said, 'Help me, please help me,' and then the line went dead." Mike leaned back in his chair, his face pale. "Sarah, I think it's time to tell you the full story. The fire I mentioned earlier, it started in the hotel's basement. A lot of people were trapped down there and didn't make it out. Some say their spirits still haunt this building, trying to reach out for help." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "You think it's one of them? But why call a random number?" Mike shrugged. "Maybe it's not random. Maybe they're drawn to people who can sense them. Or maybe they're just trying to find anyone who will listen." The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every creak and groan of the old building set her on edge. When the morning shift arrived, she was more than ready to leave. As she walked out of the building into the early morning light, she couldn't help but glance back at the windows of the call center. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadowy figure standing by one of the windows, watching her. She blinked, and it was gone. Sarah never forgot that night. She continued working the night shift, but she was always on edge, always listening for the whispering voice on the other end of the line. And sometimes, late at night, when the calls were slow and the building was silent, she could still hear those faint footsteps in the hallway, a chilling reminder that she was never truly alone.